Welcome back to NASCAR Unfiltered, and this week, the garage is not calm. Not even close. Because what happened after Watkins Glen was not just another post-race argument between two frustrated drivers blowing off steam for 30 seconds before moving on. This thing grew fast. And right now, the entire Cup Series garage is watching closely to see exactly how it all gets handled. Because depending on what NASCAR officials decide, this could impact the very next race weekend in a massive way. At first, it looked like just another emotional moment after a brutal day at one of the toughest road courses on the schedule. Tempers high, adrenaline pumping, drivers upset. We have seen that before. But then more details started coming out. More footage surfaced. More reports leaked from inside the garage. And now NASCAR itself is reportedly stepping in to review everything that happened on pit road after that race. Here at NASCAR Unfiltered, we are breaking down both sides of this story completely. Because once you hear everything, you will understand exactly why this situation is exploding across the NASCAR world right now. Let's get into it. What happened on Pittsburgh Road? Bubba Wallace versus Christopher Bell. The whole thing started right after the checkered flag at Watkins Glen. What should have been a relatively calm post-race atmosphere on pit road suddenly became one of the biggest talking points in NASCAR this week. Bubba Wallace went straight to Christopher Bell on pit road for a heated confrontation that had everybody in the area stopping and looking over wondering what exactly was happening. Fox cameras caught almost the entire exchange live while post-race interviews were going on nearby. And you could instantly see that Bubba Wallace was furious, animated, talking with his hands, clearly trying to get his point across with real intensity. Meanwhile, Christopher Bell stood there with that same calm, composed demeanor that NASCAR fans know him for. Bell did not look emotional at all in those early moments, which honestly made the tension feel even more uncomfortable to watch because the contrast between the two was so sharp. And then came the moment that really got everyone talking. Wallace looked like he was about to walk away. The confrontation seemed like it might be winding down. And then something Bell said pulled him right back into the conversation for another heated exchange. Crew members were standing nearby. NASCAR officials were watching the situation closely. And suddenly, the entire focus coming out of Watkins Glen was not even about the race winner anymore. Everybody was talking about Bubba Wallace and Christopher Bell, the race that built the frustration. Now here at NASCAR Unfiltered, context matters. Because this confrontation did not happen out of nowhere. Bubba Wallace had already gone through an absolutely grinding day at Watkins Glen before that pit road moment ever happened. He had managed to grab a stage point earlier in the race, a small positive in what became a very difficult afternoon. But the ending completely unraveled for the number 23 team. Late in the race, Wallace got spun after contact from John Hunter Nemechek, who was on fresher tires and pushing aggressively through traffic. A lot of fans immediately questioned whether Nemechek was too impatient in that moment, because Bubba was one of several drivers carefully managing both fuel and tire wear during those closing laps. The number 23 car was in a vulnerable window, and instead of waiting for a cleaner opportunity, the contact came anyway. Wallace paid the full price and ended up buried in the results with a 29th place finish. For Bubba Wallace, this was not just one bad corner at Watkins Glen. This season has already had its share of ups and downs for the 23 team. And another disappointing result at this stage of the year carries real weight when playoff pressure is starting to rise. Every point matters right now. Every bad finish adds stress. Every missed opportunity makes the math harder. So when the race ended the way it did, emotions were already at their limit before Wallace ever walked toward Bell on pit road. Why Christopher Bell? The question everyone is asking. What still has fans and insiders confused is exactly why Christopher Bell became the focus of Wallace's frustration after the race. Bell was not involved in the spin with John Hunter Nemechek. That is why the confrontation caught everybody completely off guard and why the footage spread so quickly across social media. Some people inside the garage believe something may have happened earlier during the race that television cameras did not fully capture. Others believe Bell may have said something in the immediate post-race moments that escalated the tension before Wallace approached him. But publicly, neither driver gave a clear explanation on Sunday night. Wallace briefly downplayed the situation while leaving the infield. Bell avoided giving reporters any detailed account of what happened. That silence made the story grow even bigger, because without answers, NASCAR fans immediately started analyzing every frame of the available footage, trying to piece together what really happened between these two drivers. NASCAR steps in, penalties could be coming. And then Monday arrived, and this situation became significantly more serious. According to multiple reports, NASCAR officials are now actively reviewing post-race footage and radio communications from the incident to determine whether the confrontation crossed the line from a verbal argument into physical contact. That changes everything. Because if NASCAR determines this went beyond heated words on pit road, penalties are absolutely on the table. Officials are reportedly reviewing additional camera angles from pit road, team broadcasts, and internal footage, because the television broadcast did not provide a completely clear view of the entire interaction from start to finish. Sources familiar with the review process reportedly told ESPN that NASCAR is discussing possible penalties ranging from significant monetary fines all the way up to race suspensions, depending on what the full footage shows. Bubba Wallace is believed to be under heavier scrutiny internally because officials reportedly view him as the driver who initiated the confrontation on pit road. One disciplinary scenario being discussed includes a fine in the range of $75,000 to $100,000 for Wallace, along with the possibility of a one-race suspension if NASCAR determines the altercation became physical. Christopher Bell could also face punishment if officials conclude he escalated the situation after the confrontation began, with reports suggesting Bell could face a smaller fine in the $25,000 to $50,000 range. Although NASCAR has reportedly not ruled out suspensions for either driver at this stage, the history that makes this bigger. Here at NASCAR Unfiltered, we have to address the history, because NASCAR fans immediately brought it up the moment this story broke, and for good reason. In 2022 at Las Vegas, Bubba Wallace received a one-race suspension after confronting Kyle Larson following an on-track incident. NASCAR has already shown once that they are willing to suspend drivers when they believe post-race emotions crossed an unacceptable line. That precedent is hanging directly over this entire situation right now, whether anyone wants to acknowledge it or not. NASCAR has also become extremely sensitive about confrontations happening on active pit roads specifically, because crew members, officials, photographers, and other drivers are all moving through that environment after races end. A pit road confrontation carries different weight than an argument inside the garage area. The safety context matters significantly in how officials evaluate these situations. And if they believe things escalated physically in that congested environment, they could absolutely decide to make an example of this moment. Both sides of the debate. Now let's be honest about both sides of this, because NASCAR fans are genuinely split on how this should be handled. There are plenty of fans who believe NASCAR should not step in too aggressively here. Racing is emotional. Tempers happen. Drivers are human beings competing at the highest level under enormous pressure. Seeing that raw emotion after a brutal race is part of what makes NASCAR feel real and authentic. Nobody wants drivers sounding robotic and emotionless after rough weekends. That passion is part of why fans watch every single Sunday. But there is still a line. And that is exactly what NASCAR is trying to locate right now. Was this a heated verbal exchange between two frustrated competitors after a tough race at one of the hardest tracks on the schedule? Or did this become something physical enough in a crowded pit road environment that officials feel they have no choice but to respond before things escalate further later in the season? That balance is genuinely difficult. And NASCAR's ruling over the next few days is going to send a message either way, about how much emotion is acceptable, about consistency and enforcement, and about what the garage culture looks like heading into the playoff push. What comes next? The entire Cup Series garage is waiting. Fans are debating every angle online. And this feels like one of those moments that either quietly disappears within a few days or suddenly explodes into one of the biggest stories of the entire season, depending entirely on what NASCAR decides. If a major fine comes down near $100,000 for Bubba Wallace, that is an immediate massive headline. If a race suspension follows, the playoff picture for the 23 teams shifts dramatically. Missing even a single race at this point of the year could seriously damage their postseason positioning. And if Christopher Bell receives penalties as well, this transforms from a post-race argument into one of the defining garage controversies of the 2025 season. Here at NASCAR Unfiltered, we will be following every update as it develops. Because this is not just about one emotional moment at Watkins Glen anymore. This is about how NASCAR handles driver confrontations. This is about consistency. This is about where the line is drawn between passion and something that cannot be allowed to stand. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should NASCAR stay out of this and let drivers settle things between themselves? Or do officials need to come down hard given the pit road environment and the history involved? We want to hear from you. Hit that like button, subscribe to NASCAR Unfiltered, and stay locked in, because this ruling could drop at any moment, and when it does, the reactions across the garage are going to be explosive. We will see you in the next one.